Hello, everyone. If you are getting me, just type yes in the Q&A. I see someone who called Manili Holeo. I see another one who is PC. Maybe you can rename so that I can know your name. CP Obonyo, are you getting me? Hello. CPA Obonyo. I see your microphone is on, but I'm not getting you. I don't know if you are speaking or you are not yet started. Mr. Sajo, someone who are using Sajo at 1989. You raise your hand. I give you the right to talk. If you want to talk, you can talk now. Dear attendees, we are waiting just the lecturer to join. He's already joined, but actually we are not getting him well. So we are just trying to see where there is a problem. Please be patient as we're waiting him to talk. Thank you.
have stopped.
Yes, Sergio. You want to say something? Hello. CP Obony. Are you getting us?
Hello.
Hello.
Are you getting me?
Yeah, now it's okay. We are getting you well.
Okay, it was a problem of setting. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. That's good. Maybe now you can start. You have given the right to share and document.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you too.
But
maybe before I start, allow me just to remind the student who have managed to join how they can use this platform so that this session should be more interactive, to be more productive. So actually, we have here the button, which is Q&A, we have polls, we have chat. So I just want to encourage you, if you have any question, you can just type in chat, or you can type your question in Q&A, and then the expert is here to answer. And if you have any burning issue, you want to talk, actually, you can raise your hand, and also the expert has the right to give you the right to talk. So you can even talk. If you can now, you also unmute yourself if you want to talk. So maybe we have tried. Sorry for that, because someone who was supposed to start this meeting was not being able to get the internet. That's the reason. So I just want to give you your time, and then I wish you a good session. And for those who are not yet joined and you have your number, you can just call them to join, and so that you can have a good number of attendee. Without taking much of your time, I just wish you a good session, and it's time over to you, CP Obanyo. Thank you.
yeah, thank you very much. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome all students who are going to sit November-December exams. Now, the purpose of this, the first class, it's not about, we are not going to teach, but to look at how you will handle questions or strategies you would use to pass the paper. That is the most important thing. And as per now,
Sorry, CP. Have you shared anything? Because we are not seeing anything.
I haven't shared.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to share in a minute. First, before I share anything, I wanted to welcome all members and then introduce the way forward, how we are going to handle these sessions. The first part, before we start any part, I would like to take the student through to know of course, you know, the course contents, to have an overview of, by now, each student should be able to tell what he expects from a certain topic. So by now, you should know that you should have a good coverage of the syllabus. So the first thing is to have an overview of the whole content of the syllabus. And from there, we'll do what we'll map a question paper. We see which are the areas which examiner focus, or which you need to pay attention to. The first thing I'm going to share, it's a screen of topic in the syllabus first. Now, the reason I'm sharing this is you should have, before you answer a paper, you should have the picture of the whole syllabus. Because when somebody asks, when you are reading through the question, you are able to identify that this question is coming from a certain topic. As per now, you are supposed, if I tell you, give me a summary of the whole syllabus, you'll be able to give me the summary, the content under each part. Now, for example, if I were to start giving the summary of the whole syllabus, you not go to exam without having this picture in mind of these topics that we have. That's the first thing you have to do as a student. You have a checklist, whether you have mastered the content under each area. Yeah, as a student, you should do your own evaluation, that if the question is set from, let's say, audit environment, how do I know that the question is coming from audit environment? So this is the first topic that gives you what is audit, that gives you the foundations or the definition of audit and audit environments. Topic 2, you should know auditors' responsibilities. You should be able to tell, to differentiate the responsibilities of auditors and the responsibility of management. As we understand, management has a responsibility of preparing financial statements which are free from error and fraud. But auditor, we know, is to examine books of accounts. So in this case, you should be able at least to give the auditor's responsibility. Auditor has a responsibility towards financial statements, has a responsibility towards fraud. Which responsibility does he have towards fraud? Though the primary responsibility of preventing errors and fraud lies with management, but also it doesn't mean that auditors does not have a responsibility on that. So auditor has to have what we call professional skepticism to carry out audit procedures which are able to detect errors and fraud. Then you should know audit regulation and ethics. What regulates ethics, audits, those are standards. And you should be able to explain the major 5 professional ethics. That's independence, confidentiality, professional behavior. You should also be able to tell those 5: integrity. Then auditors appointments. You should know various methods how auditors are appointed, whether through AGM, when they can be appointed by the board, by the directors. So that one, you should have it. You should be able to tell what happens during planning. Yeah, what does auditor do during planning? You should be able to at least have an overview. Like you should know that maybe at the planning, auditor does risk assessment. At the planning, you should be able to tell auditor, this is where auditor determines materiality. At the planning, this is where auditor evaluates internal control system. So though we have a topic on its own called internal control system, but you should be able what happened at the planning stage, major activities which happens at the planning stage. Then when somebody asks you about audit evidence, you should be able to have subtopics or major elements under audit evidence. Whenever we are talking audit evidence, you'll be able to tell somebody they should be, auditor should correct which kind of evidence. You should be able to explain that it's sufficient and appropriate. Audit evidence. Then, in this case, you should also be able to talk about what is the meaning of sufficient. Sufficient, we are talking about the quantity of evidence. Appropriate, we are talking about quality of audit evidence. How do you evaluate the quality of audit evidence? So, test of controls. In your syllabus, it's divided into 2 levels. One, the first test of control looks at transactions. That is on income statement. You look at sales, purchases, and what happens in the payroll. Now, at this point, most students confuse test of control with substantive tests. What are the aim of test of controls? Test of control, they are testing the ICS, whether the ICS is working effectively. Yeah. So whenever we talk about test of control, they are aimed at evaluating the ICS. But once we're talking about substantive tests, they test about the accuracy. There are tests or procedures which test accuracy, validity, and completeness. So when you are reading a question on tests, you should understand whether is it testing about, are they test of control? Are they test of control or their substantive test? Those words, if you misinterpret these two words, you are likely to answer questions wrongly. So when you are reading the question, you should know, is it testing substantive tests or test of control? Now, these test of controls are like control procedures. They test on the control procedures. Then substantive tests, they are audit evidence. They are audit tests. They are audit. These are just audit tests. Another word for substantive tests. So the test of control, we have to know techniques that used to evaluate that. Then topic 9, you are supposed to know what is analytical procedures and estimates. Analytical procedures is comparison of financial data with financial data of the same year or previous years or with other non-financial data. The reason of doing analytical procedures is to check whether there is a variation. Now, this question it can be tested in a case study. In that case, you'll be given kind of a statement of financial position for 2 years, and you are supposed to use these analytical procedures to test the variations. So they normally test whether there is variation from, let's say, if you are given the income statement of this year, you may compare it with the previous. You see what are major items which have changed. We call it variation or variance. Now, this question, we are going to look at one of the paper, and you will notice that this question, it rarely misses either in the multiple choices question, section A, or in a case study scenario. Now, when is analytical procedures done? Analytical procedure is not done only at the planning. It's done at various levels. Auditor can do analytical procedures at this point, at planning stage. Yeah, you can do analytical procedure at the planning stage to identify key areas that is going to focus. For example, if there are sales of last year and this year it has increased by, let's say, 50% or by 80%. The percentage, we usually use percentage change or ratios. We call it trend. We can use trend. We can use percentage change to do these analytical procedures. Now, when auditor finds there is a significant variance or trend at the planning stage, that one would indicate that area as an area of focus. That's at planning stage. Now, at evidence stage, still auditor can use analytical procedures to determine the extent of tests to be carried out. So, in multiple choice, they test whether you understand that analytical procedure is being done at various phases of audit. At planning, it can be done. At testing stage of collecting evidence, it can also be done. So another topic that you have is how do you do audit tests on various items. These are the major items. There, I would say, even kind of risk items that auditor would have to carry tests even before forming a report. One of it is inventory. In this case, by now, I expect you to the major challenge to know the major challenge with inventory. Number one is valuation. Number two should be cutoff. Cutoff is at the end of the year. Do you record, is the stock recorded relates to the correct accounting period? So at the end of the year, there could be maybe stock held by third parties, stock in transit, return outwards. So auditor should do the cutoff procedures to ensure that the stock is the right stock is recorded, the correct stock is recorded at the end of the year. So valuation, you should know IAS 2, because when you are testing, when you are doing audits, you have to focus also on standard when you are doing tests. What does IAS 2 say? Stock is valued the lower of 2, the lower of costs and net realizable value. So you have to mind about this, how valuation is done, how cutoff is done, also stock count. Auditor need to. Another difficult part of the stock is stock count. Does the actual stock reconciles with the stock recorded in the ledger? So these are the things you need to focus. You should have an understanding by now. How do you do, how is stock counting? What are the responsibility of auditor or procedures before stock count, during stock count, and after stock count? Stock is one of the sensitive tests that auditor need to carry out. Then another thing is non-current assets. These are PPE. PPE, you do tests whether it's accounted according to IAS 16. All of us, we have done accounting. You check whether the PPE is correctly classified, recognized, computed. So auditor has to do such tests to ensure that the PPE is correctly presented. So in these tests, you have to know the tests under PPE. like approval, like is it recorded at costs? Is there authorization? I normally use, yeah, there you can use some acronyms to remind yourself on which are items that you need to test. Like, for example, is it correct? According to IAS 16, stock should be, sometimes it's recorded at cost. When you buy an uncurrent assets like land, is there authorization? Are there board authorization? Is it correctly valued? Existence, you have to check for existence. You have to check beneficial ownership and presentation and disclosure. Is it presented according to IAS 16? Then accounts and receivable. Account receivable arise because we are doing credit sales. All of us, we understand that. Now, what are the major tests to ensure that there is existence of accounting receivable? Here, usually the major tests we do, we call it secularization. We do secularization. Now, in this secularization, as you understand, we have positive secularization. You should be able to tell this, you are confirming balances, you are sending circulars. Circulars are like letters to receivable, to customers, to confirm their balance. So there are cases of positive and negative secularization. So you should be able, before you go to exam, you should know how should you do, what is positive secularization and what is negative secularization. So positive secularization, you would require debtors to confirm their balances, then if they agree or disagree. So a negative, in this case, the receivables would confirm their balance if they only disagree. But this one, this secularization, it's used where a client has strong ICS or effective ICS. But positive secularization here, where the debtor has to confirm their balance in either way, whether they agree or disagree, you have, this is where you have evaluated your ICS at the planning stage and you have found that it is weak, then this method would be ideal. So you need to know the criteria when you are doing secularization. How do you sample receivables? I think you remember with round balances, with zero balances, with nil balances, with huge balances. So at least you should be able to have the whole content at your fingertip before you start answering the question. Now, if it's cash, you should know cash or bank. We also send some bank letters to the bank to confirm the balances. So in your book, you have format of account receivable securitization and cash bank balance. You should know the content that when you want to confirm balances from the bank, what are items you need to request. So 13, you need to know liabilities. Whenever you are talking about liabilities, it's a wide. We have current liabilities and non-current liabilities. Whenever we are talking about non-current liabilities, you need to focus on test on trade payables. Trade payables and majorly trade payables, the major test we do to confirm the existence or the balances are correct, we compare the trade payable balances with trade payable ledger. Then you would have under liability here, you may have loans, the long-term one, you may have how to test loans. Those are the non-current liability. You should also, there is provision, those one which are focused more, how to test for provisions and we have provisions, we have contingent liabilities. So auditing, you need to focus on also standards, especially when you are doing this, you are testing for IAS, when you are testing provisions and contingent liability. When are they presented according to IAS 37? By now, you should be able to explain what IAS 37 says. When for provisions, what are you supposed to do? Now, to recognize a provision, there must be like that obligating events. Obligating events may arise due to, you should be able to tell that for you to recognize a provision, there should be obligating events. Due to obligating events, it can be legal event or constructive event. So you have to know how to do the tests on that. And lastly, at the beginning here, audit environments, it gives you what is audit. The objective of audit is to give an opinion. So when you are giving the opinion, in that case, you have to understand basis of giving an opinion and types of auditors' opinion. So in that case, I know most of you understand I've known how audit opinion is given, how to form an opinion. Before you give an opinion, there is a number of issues that you should do before you give audit conclusion. Usually after you have done all these tests from at this point, you do your audit execution. Maybe let's say you have finished your events. Now, when you're forming opinion, you have to do some overall review. Overall review. This overall review have been covered in your chapter 15. You need to understand, auditor needs to review some of the critical issues other than the financial statement. They're called overall review. The one, auditor needs to look at the going concern of the firm. All of us, we understand when you are forming opinion, by now you should be able to explain what is a going concern, so in this case, going concern, you should be able to explain what is a going concern. You should be able to identify indicators of going concern, and you should be able to give procedures auditors should do to test, to evaluate whether a firm is a going concern or not. So in this case, the focus would be indicators and procedures. Then another issue about it is events. They're called events after the end of the reporting periods. Events after end of the reporting period. Now, these events after the reporting period, first you should have to understand what are you define these events after the end of the period. Of course, from the wording itself, it gives you what is events after the end of the period. You have to separate, know that we have adjusting events. Be able to talk about what are adjusting events and non-adjusting events. So after that, you should give what are audit procedures. Audit procedures. Regarding to going concern events. Of course, these adjusting events, you should know what does IAS. They are governed by IAS. Understand IAS for subsequent events. That is IAS 10. So whenever we are doing audit, if you look at the audit regulation, audit is governed by standards. We focus on ESAs. We focus on laws, various laws, national laws. We focus on financial framework, whether the financials are complying with the IAS. That's why I'm not leaving IAS out whenever I'm doing my audit test. I must know what does IAS focus on. So when you are forming opinion, another issue you have to review, if you want to know about the going concern and events after reporting period, this issue, you must seek what we call written representation from management. Written representation. Written representation from management. Management have to confirm and give explanation, confirming areas, confirming some events or some balances. So you need to look at, you need to understand written representation. And also in your syllabus, there is uncorrected misstatements. I think you have got this one. Now, when you are evaluating your, maybe when you are doing some tests, you might have identified some understatements or overstatements. Usually, or deficiencies in the internal control system. So you communicate to the management. For example, if there is overstatement or understatement of balances, you request management to make correction. At the reporting stage, you need to check whether there are some areas which are uncorrected. Now we call it usually summary of uncorrected misstatement. You do a summary of uncorrected statements. You look at how will those misstatements have an impact during opinion stage. So after that, you would give, the final thing you'll do, you have to give an opinion. In this opinion, we have different types of opinion. You should understand by now different types of opinion. Majorly, the major classification, we have qualified opinion and unqualified opinion. So under qualified opinion, you should know those subclassification of opinion, just like adverse opinion, disclaimer opinion, subject to opinion. So those subclassification of the opinion. Now, why am I doing this? I'm doing this so that when you are answering a question, you have a clear picture of your syllabus. Understanding your syllabus would make you to answer questions comfortably, to know areas that are being tested. Now, that was my first introduction. Have the syllabus at your fingertip. Now, the next stage I'm moving to, I would like us to sample a past paper question. Then this past paper question, first I do mapping, that what did the question test, Like, what was the question asking and which topic the question was asking and what was expected. Now, let me stop this share and then I share another document. Now, as you understand, your paper has this structure. This is a paper of August 2021. If you see how this paper is distributed, it's entirely covering the whole syllabus. So you can't score good marks if you have not covered this, if you have not mastered or covered the syllabus effectively. Now, the multiple question 1 up to 10, this question have 2 marks of 10 questions. And I do find these questions are easier, but students do not score them well. Because if you look at this question, because students are disrupted by distractors. Distractors, I mean, these are wrong. Those are the wrong choices in the multiple choice. So in the multiple choice question, first, yes, somebody asked, am I going to share? Yes, I'm going to share. I'm going to share the presentation. Okay, so do not underrate this question, because 20 marks can affect your passing rate. You may score 48 mark, you miss 2 mark of getting the 2 marks can prevent you from getting the pass mark. Another risk of these questions, student would overspend time doing, I'm not saying that these marks are small, but sometimes these questions are a bit challenging and you may overspend time you take longer time of doing question 1 to 10, and you leave, but the time will catch up with you and you do not effectively answer the other part. Question 11, 12, 13, or 15. So you need also to manage your time effectively. So what you need to do when you are answering this question, be it end paper in S3, those papers are very long, be it you are answering end paper of, let's say you are answering taxation, financial accounting, or management accounting, they seem to have the same structure. Plan your time well. especially do not overspend time in answering section A. If you find that a question is taking more time, put a star. Put a star, skip. Put a star and move to next question. And you'll come back later to that question. So those are the simple techniques that are required, but students tend not to manage time effectively. So another thing, if you need to answer those section A correctly, apart from planning your time, you need first understand keywordings. Keywording of the questions. The keywording of the question, if you miss the keywording in multiple choices, you may not get the correct answer. Like notes, which one is not? But I've seen in most papers, they even emphasize and put them in bold. Yeah, most, which one is not? Yeah. So not, most, is. So you need to focus on what are the key wording used. Now this key wording also, you need to know also when you are reading this question on the key wording, number 3, you also need to focus on apart from that, the keywording, identify the topic first, because these questions, they are not tested from anywhere else. Your book is well written and very well organized. You should be able to identify the topic or unit the question is coming from. At the back of your mind also, you should drill down to the subtopic. So that's what you should have at the back of the mind when you are reading a question very fast. Mark the keyword, know the topic or the subtopic being tested. So another point, you need to understand, another concept you need to focus on, distractors. If you are challenged by a question, first, distractors would help you to reach at the correct answers. Distractors are those wrong answers which tend to confuse your thinking. So first, if A, B, C, D has a concept, you need a concept that is not relevant. You need first to identify, you need to remove those multiple choices with that distractors. And then you narrow down to 2 answers. Yeah, for example, if I set the question, we are going back to the questions, but if I say, I set the question, I say, which one of the following, which one of the following is not the type of audit opinion? Which one of the following is not the type of audit opinion? Now, I would if the examiner might has to include both right answers and wrong answers here. Here, I would put and say, these are like my option. I'm just giving kind of option here. Which one of the following is not the type of opinion? I've given this, I've given this, I've given this, Now, the reason I'm coming up with this is like, how do you interpret your questions? How do you generate your thinking when you are given this? Let's say part A, you are given number of option. Which one is not? Then you are given number one, you are given 1, 2, and 3. Then option B, you are given three and 4. Option C, option you are told option C, you are told 4 and 5. Option D, it gives you 1 and 4. Option E, none of the above. Okay, now when you are reading this question, is an example I've given. First, which one of the following is not the type of an audit opinion? In this case, what I will do, number one, is to get the keywording. My keywording here is not. This one, this is audit opinion. So the first thing in my mind, what I'll come is, what's an audit opinion? What are the types of audit opinion? But which one is not? So in this question, understanding the question first and the type, the topic, very important. Notes is the key word here. Now, the first thing to answer this question, because if you start going directly to this question, some multiple choices may confuse you. What you do, I will first look at distractors if this question is very difficult to me. I may identify one of the issue which is not. Like here, if I look at that, I've identified what is called key audit matters. Key audit matter, at the back of the mind, I know it's not an opinion, but it's a part in audit opinion. All of us, we know parts of an opinion, of parts of an audit report. We have what we call opinion, responsibility paragraph. We have key audit matters. We have emphasis of matter paragraph. Now, in my multiple choice, if I've identified 4, I will remove all 4 from my options. I will start removing 4 from all my options. Now, I remain with the other 3. Now, even this emphasis of matter, this is just a paragraph. Whenever I'm seeing 5, I will do away with 5. Then my only option left is 1, 2, 3, and none of the above. Now my thinking would be narrowed down to this option, 1, 2, 3. Now I would have to do the last thinking here. Yes, unqualified opinion, it's a yes, because we have 2 types of opinion, qualified and unqualified. Now, adverse opinion and disclaimer opinion, these are the levels of qualification. These are the levels of qualification. Then E cannot be the answer. Then my correct answer I will remain with is the one which is having option 1, 2, and 3. So my emphasis is look at the keyword, look at the topic where it's coming, identify distractors. They would help you to narrow down to the right. They will help you to narrow down to the correct answer. Another thing you have to focus when you are giving this, after maybe you have skipped, go back, and maybe after you have finished the whole paper, come back to this question which were most challenging. Don't leave the space, and from multiple choices, don't leave the question unanswered. Even the last part is to guess. That's now the last option. Do kind of guesswork. And this guesswork, do kind of clever guesswork. Now, the guesswork, you can do kind of betting. All of us, I think we understand what's betting. When you do betting, it's kind of chances. Yeah, you take chances. You use even this distractors. Distractors, or you may use your general reasoning. General reasoning, this is now when you are not objective, you may use general. If you are general reasoning, use your own intuition. Like, I think you tend to think of maybe this may be, but that one may not, depending how that circumstance your mind would be. But the most important is don't leave the paper unanswered. So let me go back to I want to give you like a short break like 10 minutes, and then we come back to this paper of August 2021. We just, you see how I reason out when I'm answering these questions. So for those who have the questions for the first part I've just highlighted, you can write at the question and answer section as I give you a short break of that break of 10 minutes, and then we continue. So as I'm also looking at your questions. Yeah, welcome back to our session after that small break. Now, I'm taking you through like this August 2021, focusing on how you interpret questions. So if you look at how questions are distributed, these are marks for section A. This is for question 11, 12. The one having 10 marks, and there is another 2 questions having 20 marks. If we look at this, the question 1 was testing your understanding about ICS. So question 1 and 1 up to 10, you have to give correct answer. They don't have a room for you have to give accurate answer. So they are distributed. If you look at it, they are distributed even of their objective questions, which runs across the syllabus. So we look at number 1, it's focusing on ICS. This is risk assessment. Yeah, this one, the topic is internal control system. That's a subtopic. So whenever you are talking about internal control system, we said you have to look at components of internal control systems. Risk assessments, that one, we said it's under planning. We'll also look at legal liability of auditors, audit strategy, planning, permanent audit file, that is evidence, audit strategy, that's planning, quality control of audits, materiality, planning, inventory, those are now substantive, those are like audit evidence, carrying audit tests. Then question 10, it's about audit tests. Audit test on assets. In this paper, still question 11 is testing analytical procedures. Then question 12 is testing test of control. Test of control. Question 13, it's about controls. Those are in computerized environment. When you are carrying computerized environment, audit in computerized environment, this is risk assessment. Then audit evidence. So let me go particularly to this paper, and you check how you reason when you are answering this paper. So in the 2 hours, I need to go through this paper very fast so that we see how to approach a paper of this kind. Yeah, this is August 2021. There are 3 questions, 10 multiple question at 2, those are 20 marks. Those are a medium question. semi-structured. This is long question of that. So this is my section A. And in my answering, I don't want to take I want at least for each answer, I don't want to take more than 2 minutes at most. I don't want to spend time in this question. Timing is part of you. So if you find question 1 is taking more time, skip, go to question 2. For example, let me read here. I want you to read question 1. Now, segregation of duty is a control activity that aims at making it more difficult for fraudulent transaction to be processed and accidental errors to occur. Which of the following key functions should be segregated from others? Now, which of the following key functions should be segregated? Now, my keywording here, key functions, and there is segregation. Now, the first thing which has come to my mind, which topic this one is coming from. This one, I will know it's control. Whenever I'm talking about control activity, this one is coming from ICS. This is coming, this is internal control system. Internal control system. Then I will know that internal control has 5 components. Among those components, we have control environment, control procedures, risk assessments, counting information system, and supervision of control. This is coming from control activities. And among the control is segregation. Now, the purpose of the objective of internal control is to control, first, to safeguard assets, to prevent errors and fraud, efficient operations like that. Now I have to read this multiple choice. Don't start with the answers because this one would confuse you. Read this first. Authorizing and initiating transactions. What is segregation first? Segregation is different duties are done by different persons. So, authorizing and initiating transaction. So, these are the functions of management. Yes. When you are delegating, there is a person who initiating, the one who start processing the transaction. It's called initiating. And there's a person who authorize. Those one, they should be separate. That's okay. Filing and archiving financial documents, I'm not sure. So you go to another one, fiscal custody and control of assets. Yes, because it is one of the objective of the ICS. Yes, I'm back. I'm back to that August 2021 paper. In this paper, if I look at 4, recording of transaction, because there are some controls, whenever we are segregating duties, we ensure the person who is initiating, recording, authorizing, they are different. So basically, the internal controls do not talk about filing. Filing and archiving of financial documents are not major emphasis of segregating. They are not parts that should be segregating. This is just like the objective of this would not control errors. So when you have like number two being a distractor, first you need to remove all twos from your answer. In A, B, C, I'm seeing number 2. So what I should do, all number 2, I will remove them and remain with D. This is how I've arrived my D. This is why I've arrived D as my correct answer. So in D, if I want now to confirm authorizing, yes. Fiscal custody or control of asset, yes. The person who is keeping the asset should be different from the person who is recording, who is keeping. For example, inventory. The person who is recording inventory, authorizing the purchase of inventory, the one who have the key for the store should be different. So in this case, I will say my correct answer is D. So you should have a criteria of arriving at the correct answer. So number 2, audit risk represent the risk that auditor will give an inappropriate opinion on the financial statement when the financial statement are materially misstated. Which of the following category of risk can be controlled by the auditor? Now, in this case, my focus is audit risk. In this risk, you have to know components of audit risk. So these are the risks which have been given here. If you look at this, the keyword here can be controlled. Can be controlled. Which of these risks which can be controlled? Controlled mean the auditor can manipulate or can control. Now, for example, control risk, we have detection risk, we have sampling risk. Control risk, I may not be sure. Okay, I'm like putting in yourself in the shoe of a student who is not very sure. Control risk, whether it's controllable. Now, I may come to detection risk and sampling risk. For example, sampling risk is a risk that auditor may, the population may differ from the sample. The outcome of the sample may be different. The outcome, the result of the sample may be different from that of the population. Now, if I come with sample, I would ask myself, who chooses the same sample size? The sample size is chosen by auditor. So here, sample size is chosen by auditor. Therefore, that risk can be controlled by auditor. If I look at detection risk, what is detection risk? Detection risk is the risk that auditor will give an inappropriate opinion due to the procedures being used. So here, who come up with audit procedures? Here, we said sample is determined. Sample is determined by the auditor. Sample is determined by auditor. Then, in this case, detection risk. Who comes with detection risk? Because we have said audit procedures. One of the factors which may cause detection risk from the definition is audit procedures being used. Now, audit procedures are determined by auditors. Now, this one, it depends. The ICS here, the ICS may not detect the misstatement. So this one, if I look at that, number one is a distractor. Whenever I see number one, I would put this one out. I'll put this one out. And then I have this one, 2 and 3. I will have 2 and 3 as the correct answer. Then if I go to number 3, if the auditor have been negligent, it's possible that a third party may have a claim against the auditor even if they do not have a contract with them. What are the 3 requirements for a third party to claim negligence to be valid? Now, here, I have to look at the keywords. Here, the keyword is negligence. Where is this topic covered from? Where is it being tested from? This one is tested from auditor's liability. That one, I will say, this one is covered. I would say this is auditor's liability. Now, if it's auditor's liability, then negligence. Negligence, I know that there are 3 proofs that a person should prove. Number 1, there should be duty of care. This one, even you do not need have to read this first. You must have the general knowledge about negligence. We have 3 ways of proving negligence. Duty of care must be present, breach of duty of care, and financial loss. That one needs you have those 3 points. Now here, number 1, duty of care does not exist. This one, I will say this is a wrong answer. Duty did not exist. Duty of care must exist. Even at this point, I may not read the whole part. Duty of care existed, yes. Negligence by the auditor occurred. Damage in form of monetary loss, which occurred by the clients. This one appeared to be convincing, but I can't give answer at this point before I read other points, because you may find this one is persuading you, but not the correct answer. Duty of care existed, no negligence. This is wrong. Negligence must be there. Duty of care did not exist. This one, I leave it at this point. Then I find my correct answer to be B. This one, I'll find my correct answer to be B. For correct answer, I'm indicating with red. Now, number 4, the objective of international standard on auditing, planning, and audit of financial statement is to plan audit so that it will be performed by auditor in an effective manner. What are the key general areas among the following that are part of audit strategy? Now, these are the 1, reporting framework and scope of audit, sample sizes, materiality levels, management representation, risk assessments. So in that one, the main topic where this one is coming is planning. And at the planning, you need to set what we call audit strategy. Yeah. Audit strategy, which would give you the scope, okay, the extent, timing, and nature of the procedures you'll carry out. So this is planning. What are the components of audit strategies? So in that case, if that question appears to be challenged to you, identify the possible distractors. Now, in my case, I will have to use this approach. what are the items, what are the things which are done at the planning? Because we have major phases of audit. We have planning, execution, and reporting. Now, if I go through these points, there are some points, there are things which are not done at, I may say, which are not done at the planning phase. Like here, reporting framework and scope of audit. Of course, the audit strategy determines the scope and the reporting framework. This one is done at the beginning stage. This one, yes. Then sample sizes, I may ask myself, where is the sample size being used? Is sample size being done at the planning stage? Where is the sample size being used? The simple sample size would be used at execution stage. This one I may say, no, it's not part of the audit strategy. But because at the planning stage, this one I may say no. Materiality level. When is materiality set? Materiality is materiality is being set at the planning stage. Before you do the audit, set at planning. Materiality is set at planning to test whether the figures which would give you, which would be significant when you are doing tests. So it's at the planning. This one, the scope, you have to do at the planning. It's done at the planning. Management representation. Management representation, that one is not part of planning. Management representation is when you are actually executing, when you are executing audit, you need management to confirm some confirmation. This is done at execution stage. Execution stage. This is at execution stage. You may not require it at the planning stage. Risk assessment, of course, you have to do the risk assessment at the planning stage. Why do you need to do it? It may even give you the approach you'd be using in the audit. So number 2, whenever I see number 2 in my option, that one would not be the answer. This one, I would say this is not answer. This one I will put X. Whenever I see number 4, I would put X. And then I look at number 1, of course, it's planning. Number 3, of course, materiality is set at the planning, and the risk assessment is done at the planning. Then I would give A as my correct answer. Then I move to number 5. Which of the following document would normally be retained in the permanent file maintained for an audit client? I would ask myself, what is this permanent audit file? From which topic? This one comes from documentation of audit evidence. This is documentation of audit evidence. We have permanent file and current audit file. Permanent, so the distinction would help you to phase out distractors. So this permanent audit file, if you don't know current audit file, the difference between permanent and current audit file, you may not answer this question effectively. So what you do here is which one keeps information of long-term of more than one financial period. Let me read a completed checklist of statutory disclosure and provision. Now, provision, those are the pertaining current financial statements, current year financial statements. Therefore, this one would be kept in current audit file. This one would be kept in current audit file. Then, this one I would not give it as the correct answer. The problem is provisions. Provisions are current audit. Extract of minutes of meetings of the directors. This is somehow I keep it. Which minutes are those? Written representation obtained from management. So written representation are pertaining to current audit. Representation, they normally respond to matters raised or matters raised maybe by auditors, and management is responding to written representations. This is current audit. This is current audit file. Current audit file. Copy of company legal constitution. Now, if I weigh B and D, I'm remaining with B and D. The first one is current audit file. Now, if I look at B and D, a constitution and minutes, of course, there are some minutes which may be used more than 1 year, but if you look at these minutes may not be like non-current. The minute, let's say, there are some minutes could not be long-term than a constitution. A constitution would be used throughout. So it will be stored in what we call a permanent audit file. So D is the most appropriate answer for that. Now, if I go to number 6, ISA states that auditor shall update and change overall audit strategy and audit plan as necessary during the course of audit. What among the following would require auditor to update the audit strategy as required by the standard? What among? Meaning, you are giving more than two choices. So audit strategy, we said it is planning still. So when would what you would adjust or change your initial plan? Of course, by now we understand what is audit strategy. It sets the scope, timing of an audit. So let's go through each option in number 6. Change in accounting policies. Then departure of one of the key financial personnel. Weak internal controls. 4, the client has opened a new branch during the year. So in that case, you have to still have that knowledge that what is audit strategy. In audit strategy, you are aiming at the scope, timing, and extent of procedures to be done at the planning stage. So in that case, you have to the audit, the change. The word here is when would you update the audit strategy? Since you know what are the components from number 4. Number 4, you saw the components of the audit strategy. You would answer this question clear. So change in accounting policy, yes, because we said it's part of the reporting framework. Framework and scope of audit is part of the audit strategy. So if the accounting policy changes, you have also to change your strategy. This one, yes. Departure of key financial personnel. I'm not sure. Weak internal control system. At the beginning of audit, we said you evaluate the ICA. Yes. If maybe you discover that the ICS is weak, you may change your approach. Because at the beginning, that's where you evaluate the ICS. And if you find it's weak, you may use risk-based approach. If it's strong, you may end up using a system-based approach. The client has opened the new branch during the year. Yes, new branch will change the scope of your work. Then this is yes. This one will change the scope. Now, departure of one of the key financial personnel. This one would not make you to somehow change, will not make you somehow change the audit approach, but it may make you to, if it's key personnel, maybe you change what we call you reissue engagement letter, but it does not affect your audit strategy because it's not affecting your extent, timing, or procedures of your audit. Accounting will affect procedures. Weak ICS will affect the scope of audit and the procedures. Opening branch will affect the scope of your audit. So here you'll find, you remove the distractor. Here is number 2. Whenever you see number 2, B, C, D, you remove it, and then you have the first part as the correct answer. Then when you move down, number 7, Mansi is an auditor at George Partners. During the audit, he had disagreement with client relating to an accounting treatment on impairment of PPE in accordance with ISA 220. Quality control of an audit of financial statements. What would you advise Mansi to do in this situation? So the key part, this comes from a topic called quality control. So at the back of the mind, I know quality control, they ensure that there is quality audits. So they are not like internal controls. These are procedures to ensure that quality audit is being done. So in these quality control procedures, you have to understand the component of quality controls. The quality control procedures would have like at two levels, at the firm's level and at specific engagement. In that case, if you are doing an engagement and this disagreement, because here they are testing whether you understand components of quality controls. The quality controls include consultation. You need to do, auditing firm need to have proper mechanism of doing consolidation, reviewing audits, and audit documentation like that. Monitoring controls. Now this is one being tested. In case there is a disagreement, how does auditor resolve the issue? So if I have that one in mind, I would be able to choose the correct answer here. Explain the accounting treatment for impairment to the client. Again, force him to adapt Mansi's interpretation. So Mansi is an auditor. He had a disagreement with the clients on treatment. So you have to understand at your level here. At your level here, you are at this level, maybe you are the audit assistant. Now, Mansi is an auditor here. He has disagreed. Now, once he has disagreed with the clients, explain the accounting treatment for impairment to the client. Again, force him. The problem here, force. In accounting, we do not force. So force, it could be an ethical word. B, escalate the matter to the engagement partner and request further guidance and intervention. This is somehow, but let's read other. Accept the client's accounting treatment for impairment, since the client is the one who knows better the property, plant, and equipment for the company. Okay, this is like you are being compromised. Among the ethical issues, the 5 issues, we have the threats. We have like intimidation threats. We have like familiarity threats, self-review threat. This is kind of a threat that the client would, because the client, you feel when the client is better experienced, he would give you have to accept. So this is wrong. You do not need to accept what the client treatment, even if is experienced in that matter. The matter is wrong, we use accounting standard. So do nothing. So B seems to be correct, to be the correct option, because we have what we call consolidation. If there is a disagreement, you are at, let's say you are senior auditor, you have to do consolidation. at the higher level of auditing firm. The higher part of auditing firm is called the partner. You will refer the matter to the partner. The partner would resolve the issue. So the correct answer there is B. Number 8, which of the following statement about materiality is correct? Now here it's testing materiality, the one we said which is set at the planning stage. This one you have to read. Information is material if its omission or misstatement could influence the economic decision of users of the financial statements. Yes, this is the definition of materiality when an information is material. This is the definition from even financial accounting. Materiality is based on auditors' experience and judgment. Of course, when we are setting materiality, this is the issue which is subjective. Materiality is subjective, yes. Then materiality is always based on the turnover. Now, you have to be key with the words here. The problem with this word is always. Yes, materiality is based on the turnover, but not always, because we have other. So that one is to test you whether you know basis of determining materiality. We have others like sales, others like profit before tax. This is wrong. We have profit before tax. We can determine profit before tax. We can determine on total assets. Materiality on total assets, materiality on net assets, and so many other criteria. Then number 9, so in this case, the materiality is only be calculated at the planning stage. The problem here is only. The problem is only. Now, yes, materiality can be materiality and analytical review. They could be used at different stage of an audit. You can do materiality at the planning, and then you could use materiality at substantive stage, where you are determining the after you have found an at the beginning, it will give you where you are going to focus. It's at the planning is setting materiality. Then at execution, you will be using the materiality you set at the planning stage. So it's not only calculated at the planning stage. It can be, in that case, materiality, it can be calculated at any stage, execution or planning. So number 1 and 2 are the best answers for this, which best explains what materiality is. Number 9, it's testing you accounting. IAS 2, inventory state that inventory should be valued at the lower of which among the following? So this one we know from accounting, we value, okay, this one you need to understand the accounting, like how do we value inventory? Usually it's the lower of costs and net realizable value. So that one, it is kind of knowing that concept of materiality, meaning measured at costs and net realizable value. So it's costs, this costs and net realizable value. So this one and 3 are the correct answer. Now, assuming you don't know that concept, you had to use like, it doesn't make sense to value the inventory at the selling price, because inventory is part, it's part of the cost of sales. It's a cost of sales. So number 2, if you would see option number 2, I would even use, if I didn't know that, I would disqualify that. I would disqualify this option having number 2 and then remain with 1. That's the final guesswork I would have done if I did not have this concept that inventory is valued at cost and net realizable value. This is the guesswork I would have used. Still, I get the correct answer. So number 10, which of the following audit procedure is most appropriate when testing for existence, rights, completeness of trade receivable balance? Now you are testing assertions for trade receivables. So in our syllabus mapping, we talked about how do you, the best way of confirming the balances, especially the existence, is you do circularization. So in that case, receivable confirmation and circularization, comparison of data statement with the receivable ledger statement. This one we said is more appropriate for trade payables. This one would be more suitable for trade payables. Analytical procedures may not give you a sense of existence. Comparison, this one may not be like complete, may not give you the accuracy. Test of controls, it's more on the ICS, may not give you more on existence. So the best word, even here, test of control is overall word. So the best option, the correct option here, you do circularization. That is called confirmation. So so you have just looked at how I am reasoning out to identify correct and wrong answers. Now, if there is a question, you can write on the inbox, and then I will address that. In section B, we have 10 marks question. So if you look at question 1 and 10, those questions are well distributed and they cover kind of the whole syllabus. So you don't need to like say this part will not come or will not come. So you need adequately, I was emphasizing that you need to have the syllabus at the fingertip. Your book, you should have it, the contents very clear. Then question 11, this is a question. I would like to give you like 3 minutes, you go through it. You can go through it and then we look at how to answer these scenario questions. Okay, hope you've read the question. If you see the way the question is developing, number one, it's referring to a standard. So it's good to read the case study. The case study would, number one, give you the details. You understand the topic being tested. Here, if I see here, it's giving me the standard, and even it gives the definition of, suppose I'd forgotten the meaning of analytical procedures, I would go through this definition. Analytical procedure, I've been trained. Analytical procedure clearly explained to you that analytical procedure consists evaluation of financial information made by a study of plausible relationship, both financial and non-financial data. So that is the meaning of analytical procedures. You are doing kind of comparison. Plausible relationship. It's comparison of like similar items, both financial data and non-financial. They also encompass the investigation of identified fluctuation. This one we said when I was doing syllabus mapping, I was kind of talking about the purpose of analytical procedure is to identify fluctuation or variations and relationship that are inconsistent with other relevant information or deviate significantly from predicted amounts. You have assigned by your audit manager to review and conduct thorough analytical procedures on various accounting balance, including payroll and accounting payables. So those are specific area in the case study that you are going to focus. Now, with the reference to the above scenario, identify and explain at least 4 factors you should consider as an auditor while conducting substantive analytical procedures. Now, this one, this question, you have to understand the content. It's coming from the topic called analytical procedures and estimates in your book. So these factors, there are specific factors that are well outlined in your book. So, and some, if you read the case study carefully, the case study, some has refilled some of the factors. If I read that case carefully, what I do, we have what we call factors to consider. Factor to consider when you are doing what we call substantive. Yeah, substantive. Now, these factors are usually 4. In reference to that case study, there is something they have said about if I go to the case study, one of the factor is this. They are always encompass investigation of identified fluctuation and relationship that are inconsistent with other relevant information or deviate significantly from predicted amounts. So in that case, I will get my first point from there. One of the factor when you are doing that is called variation. It's called the difference, the amount of the difference. Identify and explain at least 4 factors. One is called variation or difference. Variation or difference. Now, it has been highlighted in the case study. So in that case study, you have to read in between the case study because some of the answers could be paraphrased to test your understanding about what is in the book. Because these scenario questions, you would find they are kind of testing your reasoning, how you relate your reasoning with what is in the book. So it's knowledge and scenario aspect. So when you are doing variation or difference as a factor, how is it being used in analytical review? So in this case, auditor considers, you'll consider maybe financial data with the expectation or with expectation or with the expected pattern to identify this one. They have explained here significant variation, to identify significant variation. Now, identifying is also, you need to look at the structure of the marks given. So another aspect, number 2, when you are looking at analytical factor to consider whether you are using analytical procedure, is because you are doing comparison of information, you have to look at precision. Precision here whether the expectation is precise. Precision, it means accuracy. accuracy, accuracy with which the results can be predicted. Now, let me give you example here. If you are comparing the financial statement for two items, maybe I have to emphasize this because analytical procedure is one of the issue which is very important in audit. So yeah, these subjects, we are not only doing it for just passing. It's one area that is practically used. So if, for example, analytical review procedures, I want to give you the picture. This is, let's say, 2021. This is 2022. Now, I want to look at, let's say, this is sales. They said here was 100 in 2022. It was, let's say, 200. Here we have receivables. Receivables, let's say, receivable was here 70. Here it was 140. Here I say there is payables. Yeah, let me assume the same. I want to give now this one, you have to do kind of, we use, let's say, percentage change. This is what we call variation. In Roman 1, this is what we call variation. Now I have to check the variation. This from 100 to 200. This one has changed by 100%. 100%. This is my first analytical review, my analytical procedure. Receivable has changed also by 100%. This one has changed by also 100%. Let me say by same. Now, when you are looking at the precision, accuracy with which the result can be predicted, you will only compare, you look at what we call plausibility. It's a word which is being used here. Plausible relationship. you have to, whenever you are doing analysis of two items, for you to be of precision, there must be a relationship. Sell result to receivables, but there is no plausibility between sales and payable. So here, the accuracy with which result can be predicted, if you compare sales and receivable, you may make a reasonable conclusion, but you can't, there is no relationship between sales. For here, it's reasonable that sales increased. When the credit sale increased, my expectation is receivable should increase by the same amount. But increase in the pay sales are not directly affect, there's no direct plausibility between sales and payables. That's what we call precision, accuracy within which result can be predicted. It depends on the relationship between the two items. Now, the third point, when you are doing analytical. Now, in this case, if I find significant, where are we going to use this, like this percentage? If I'm doing this analytical procedure at the planning stage, I would have to focus on these big percentages. Then I say, if sale increased by 100%, did the receivable increase by the same? Then I would write my observation that it's reasonable. But if I find, for example, sale was 70, this one is like, it has moved to 35. There's a drop of 100%. Then I will question this. I will have to question, and during my audit, I will carry more tests on receivables. I will have, because there is a relationship between sales and receivables. Now, factor number 3, when you are doing analytical procedures, you look at suitability. You look at the suitability of the information. Suitability of the analytical procedures Now, the suitability, when is analytical procedures more suitable? They are suitable when you are carrying large volume, we call it large volume of transactions. That's where, when the suitability is. And another thing you look at, the factor is reliability of the procedures. Reliability of the data, if I can say. Now, at the evidence stage, we talked about reliability. How do you test the reliability of the data? The reliability of the data when you are doing analytical procedures, it depends on the source. It depends on the source of the data. Like information obtained from independent sources it is more reliable. And also, if you look at the case study above, we have talked about comparison. Comparison somewhere. In that case, when you're talking about reliability, you check whether the reliability, whether data is comparable or plausible. So those are the 4 main factors we look at when you should consider while conducting substantive procedures. So here you had to identify and explain by using these words. These are the key wording when you explain this analytical procedures. So it's a very common question. So you have to prepare well on analytical procedure. Here, Roman 2, it is testing you whether you know, give example of account balance for Mugisha and Sons Limited financial statement that are suitable for analytical procedures. Okay. If you look at this case study, here we have payroll and accounts payable. So in that case, what are you going to consider in that? So Mugisha is doing payroll. So what are information you have to compare with payroll, information which is related to the payroll? When maybe you are comparing with payroll, which are other plausible? The question is asking, give account balances. So here, when you are talking about that, you are talking about a case of, if I'm talking about payroll, I mean their salaries and wages. I will compare the payroll with salary and wages, and I see whether there is kind of plausibility. Then if I'm talking about accounts payable, which information is plausible to the accounts payables? You may compare with cost of sale, may consider with cost of sales. Those ones which are related. So you are not supposed to answer outside the context. It's those ones accounted. It was testing you whether you know accounts related with these two. end accounting, end balance related to account payables. You are the ones which you could name in this given scenario. You see, this is a scenario question, not a general question. You had to relate with payroll and accounts payable. The plausibility, the related account. You see whether that amount is matching. Then, if I go down, discuss N4 substantive analytical procedure you expect to conduct while reviewing payroll costs for Mugisha and payroll cost for Mugisha and Sons Limited. So this question, when you are doing substantive procedures, you use so many, you use what are, so it's testing you whether you know and what, when you do comparison, nature and purpose of analytical procedures, what are you supposed to use when you are doing comparison? When you are doing comparison, you may use similar information of prior periods. Yeah, you may prior periods. For example, for payroll, the prior period you may use monthly. You may compare monthly payroll. That's when you are doing, you may use periods, prior periods to check the pattern. So you may use monthly, you may do monthly payroll costs. You check the trend of the trend in the monthly payroll costs. You'll also compare yearly payroll costs. If it's 2021 and 2022, you look at the trend of yearly payroll costs. Then you may use even industry information, anticipated results, like anticipated results. If there is a, you'll compare if there is a pay rise, you look at the, you compare the impact of the pay rise. If let's say there is 10% increase in the payroll, you expect, this is about expectation, you expect the payroll cost to increase. So another thing you may do, there are so many tests that you'll do to check whether the amounts are reasonable. You may compare You may compare the information with budgets. Compare payroll costs with budgets. Analytical review is more of comparison, trend, result, trend like that. So you may do so many tests concerning that. You may also do what we call, you compare overtime payroll costs versus the normal costs. So these are the possible tests you will carry out over the payroll. There are so many tests you can do on the payroll. So that question was testing analytical procedures, how practical aspect of carrying the analytical procedures. So question 12, the question 12, the overview of question 12, it is testing about, if we go to the question, clearly identify 4 of your test of control objective for Kasongo spare parts on inventory. So the key word in this question is test of controls. As I emphasized at the beginning, I said that we should not confuse test of control and substantive tests. The test of controls, the purpose of test of control is to test the effectiveness of the internal control system, ICS. And this one, it's particularly inventory. So when you are answering this question, you should know first these keywords. And then when you are giving the objective, you should know the risk that is exposed to a given area whenever you are testing the objective of the control. Now, for example, inventory. What are the areas of risk in inventory? Inventory, we said, when I was explaining, we said the major part is valuation. Okay, the major, one of the problem risk of inventory is valuation. Another problem of inventory is it's also prone to theft. There is also aspect of slow moving items. So when you have that one in mind, it's very easy to give the objectives of the risk, which an asset. Here, maybe tomorrow you may find they have said objective of what are the control you have been tested on to give what are the control objectives over sales. So you should understand what are the risks facing when we are when the management or when the accountant is recording sales. So in that question, that is under internal control system. The control objective, you would focus on the risks involved. Now, when you are writing objective, you should know how to frame your answers. For example, if I'm answering that question, first I should know what are they, because internal control are focusing to achieve the objective to control errors and fraud. So I would write so that a person identify that it's an objective. The clear word here is objective. You are not asked of the procedures, control procedures, or because we have control objectives and we have what we call control activities. Control objective, what are you aiming at? But control activities, it is about here, let me emphasize on that, because in audit, once you confuse those keywording, you are likely to give wrong answers. Wrong objectives, control objectives. This is about the aim. Control activities. Whenever you're talking about control activities, those are control procedures you have to put in place. You have to put in place to achieve those objectives. So when you are reading a question, mark those keywording so that you do not answer the question irrelevantly. Now, for example, I said when you are writing objective, write 2 to show that it is an objective 2. To ensure, for example, I may say to ensure, because I told you when you are looking at inventory, what we look at, number 1, existence, cutoff, existence. Does that stock exist? Does it belong to the correct accounting period? Is it correctly recorded? Does it belong to the clients? And are there authorization? So I write that one to be an objective. I'll write a sentence to make sure that it sounds to be like an objective. Now, for example, I may say to ensure cutoff procedures, for example, to ensure cutoff procedures are properly, ensure that cutoff procedures are properly applied to inventory. So when somebody reads the keywording, yes, identify that, and 2 is what I'm aiming to do. Then secondly, I would say to ensure that inventory quantity, because ensure that inventory quantity has been correctly recorded. So another, to ensure that person can say to ensure, so long as you understand what happens with inventory, to ensure that inventory belongs or inventory belongs, maybe exists, and belong to the clients. Now, if you read my points here, it would show you that like those are like procedures, those are like aims. If another person writes, like, for example, 2 means those are the objectives. So do not confuse and write maybe segregation of duties. If you write segregation of duties, that is not a control objectives. That is a control activity. If you write an answer that let's say maybe check is you are doing that's not an objective. So you have to understand the key wording when you are answering audit questions, especially test of control, control activities, and substantive tests. B, advise the management of Gasongo spare parts on how to estimate the loss incurred from theft and show procedures to identify slow moving and obsolete inventory. So if you look at this question, it is testing particularly on procedures. How to estimate the loss from theft to identify slow procedure. That's now kind of substantive tests you need to carry out. So for example, in that question, it is inventory. As when you are doing inventory, we have different parts. As we said, we have different parts. We have movement of it. There are some tests you do on movement of inventory. There are some tests you do on how inventory is recorded. There are some tests you do. You need to know those various procedures. Then we have those one of cutoff. We have those one of loss. We have those one of checking obsolete. obsolete goods. So for example, to estimate the loss, you have to do, for example, inventory counts. How to estimate the loss incurred, advice management of Gasongo spare parts on how to estimate the loss incurred from theft, and show procedure to identify slow moving. And those are 2 parts. How to estimate, you can do inventory counts. That's what you do. Then for the other part, procedure to show slow moving items, also there are procedures that we do. So if those ones are well, because of time, they are well outlined in your book. So before you go to exam, look at, if you look at page 200 of your book, you'll find that there are some procedures which have been given on various parts of the inventories. So you have to know those ones on the movements, on different areas, regarding valuation, regarding obsolete goods, all of those you have to check. Then maybe during our next session, we are going to focus on how to answer those 20 marks questions. Now, if you look at, for example, this paper, the 20 marks question is, one is coming from what I can say, audit review, ICT, conducting audit in a computerized environment, and audit opinions, how to give an audit opinions. So those are the parts that we need to cover in the next session. Now, because I see time is a bit rushing, and I don't know whether you have another session, I may give you time to raise questions. You can open your microphone and give maybe areas where you face challenges when answering audit questions, or anyone who asks a question, please, you are free to ask the question. So if there is no question, I would like to give the summary of what we have done. First, my major emphasis was like have a summary or tips of each area in the syllabus. Secondly, we have seen techniques of answering section A questions and section B scenario questions. So in our other session, we'll further look at how to approach those long questions. So if you do not have any other question, yeah, for today, if you do not have another question, yeah, next time I will come up with the case studies. We see how to answer question on the long case studies. Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
Thank you, Bonyo, for a good presentation. Thank you for those who managed to join our session. So I would like to inform them that next session will happen on Saturday. So they need to check on timetable to find the link and then join for the final session. So I've seen someone who raised the hand. I don't know, it is I'm not seeing the name. So let me allow him to talk. So for the one who raised hand, he's allowed to talk. He can ask any question that might have, or if it is, oh, I think he lowered a hand. Maybe there is no question. So thank you for this presentation. Wish you a nice day and wish you next nice week ahead. So Bonyo, see you next Saturday.
Okay, thank you.
Most welcome.